Hello and welcome to Factually. I'm Adam Conover. Thank you so much for joining me again. You know, if you're like me, you like to eat. In fact, you have to eat or you'll die. And you might have noticed that food has been getting a lot more expensive. Although inflation for food has slowed relative to 2022, you have to remember that the effects of inflation are cumulative. And recent numbers showed increased prices for everything from frozen juice to ground beef. Eating out is more expensive than last year, and even vending machine prices are up. It sucks. Again, we all have to eat, and for most of us, living off the grid and growing our own meat and potatoes is not an option. So ideally, we'd have a world where different food companies compete to get us the lowest price, right? Well, unfortunately, just as with industries like newspapers, internet advertising, airlines, and athletic shoes, that competition doesn't exist anymore at all. Instead, our food system is run by monopolies, and those monopolies have the power to screw us, whether we're their customers, their workers, or citizens living in places where they exert unfair and undemocratic influence over our lives. I mean, I can't believe I have to say this, but food is simply one of the necessities of life, which means it's a bad thing that only a few people in this country have control over that necessity. You simply cannot explain how we get our beef, pork, grain, how grocery stores work, why prices are higher than ever, without understanding the influence of these massive and manipulative companies. And luckily, on the show today, we have a guest who knows everything about it, and not only that, is from one of the very regions that produces our essential foodstuffs. He not only knows about this, he has lived it himself, and I cannot wait for you to hear this interview. But before we get to it, I just want to remind you that if you want to support this show and all of the fascinating, challenging, and intelligent conversations we bring you every single week, you can support us on Patreon. Head to patreon.com/Adam Conover. $5 a month gets you every one of these episodes ad-free. You can join our community as well. We would love to have you there. And if you want to come see me do stand-up comedy, head to adamconover.net for tickets and tour dates. Soon I'm headed to Phoenix, Arizona, Toronto, Canada. I'm going to have a lot of other dates up there soon. Head to adamconover.net to check them out. And now, my guest today is Austin Frerick. He's an expert on agriculture and antitrust policy. He's a fellow at Yale, and he is born and currently lives in Iowa, right here in the United States. His fantastic new book is called Barons, Money, Power, and the Corruption of America's Food Industry. Please welcome Austin Frerick. Austin, thank you so much for being on the show, man.
Thanks for having me on, Adam.
Okay, so tell me, what is so fucked up about America's food system?
How radical it's become. You have one man in Iowa as the most powerful political person in the state, and he does 5 million hogs a year. I mean, that alone, that one little example.
He does 5 million hogs a year. What do you mean by he does them? That could mean a lot of things, some of which I don't want to picture.
Yes. So he has about 7,000 workers, employees at this point. A lot of them are contractors, so you got to be careful with the word workers. But he owns 5 million hogs. He has other people grow them, but he maintains the ownership as they grow them out. But his operation produces 5 million hogs a year.
And how much of the American, pork supply is that?
So he's the 4th largest pork producer in America. Basically, in my lifetime, you've seen the hog family farmer die, where you have the 10 largest entities do about 70% of the hog market, control it, including the largest owner of hogs is actually a Chinese multinational, Smithfield.
Is there a reason you're saying, by the way, hogs and not pigs? I'm just very curious.
Oh, no, I use them interchangeably.
Oh, okay. I was like, is pigs wrong? Should I not be saying pigs? Do I look like a city folk if I'm saying pigs? Okay. Well, and so why is that a problem to have that be so monopolized in so few hands, that one person is doing so many hogs?
So let's just take hogs. So I open my book opens with a hog baron, this hog guy. I know, isn't that, first of all, I'm
sorry. The hog baron is just, what a great image. It sounds like an anime character or something like that. I imagine a guy with like a top hat and there's like a little snout on the front. He's got some goggles and he's like, hello, I'm the hog baron, oink, oink. Like that's, what a great guy.
You got to put a little bit more Florida on him. So my hog baron has like a Florida twist to him. First of all, I find this campy. That's kind of why I like this framework is you don't feel powerlessness because it's so morally ridiculous. And this whole thing started because of him. I literally was in a bar in Des Moines 2018 where a political person was complaining. I didn't know at the time, but like Iowa doesn't have campaign contribution limits. So he had given the governor $300,000 for her campaign.
Wow.
And the thing that caught my eye was, it was not even that. It was, he has a home in the rich suburb of Des Moines. He has a home down in Naples, Florida, which says something, but he has a private jet that he flies back and forth between the two.
Wow.
And I was like, that's power. That is like, that imagery says everything about how did Iowa fall apart in my lifetime? How do I tell this bigger structural story with this little like trashy Florida man.
So there used to be such a thing as a family hog farmer. Now we have a hog baron, but there used to be a hog peasant or a hog small landowner, right? A hog family farmer.
Yeah, and now those people now are low-wage workers for this baron. And instead of having a relationship with the animal, your job now is about 10% of the pigs die inside these metal sheds. So you're paid to go in there, haul the dead bodies, and throw them into a dumpster.
Wow.
I mean, that is where we are now.
But that's also, like, for those people, an erosion of the middle class, right? Because if you previously, I assume, were a hog farmer, you had some ownership of some land, of the animals, of your production pipeline. You were a producer selling to somebody, and I imagine that you were able to make more money that way than when you're just a serf working for the hog baron.
Yeah, and you're spending your money locally, you're paying taxes, you're sending your kids to school, and that's all gone. You see the massive consolidation of power, and honestly, the guy's probably taking his money down to Florida knowing how this game works. And what happens is it's basically modern day sharecropping. It really comes from chicken. They call it chickenization, and it's happened across the food system, and it happened to pork. He saw that coming where, I kid you not, a century ago when they wrote the regulations to tackle the meat monopolies in response to Upton Sinclair's The Jungle, when they wrote the regulations, they didn't write chicken into it because there weren't commercial chicken slaughterhouses. You just butchered a chicken in your backyard. So down south, corporations took that model to black farmers, a sharecropping model, applied it to chicken. And then what you see is USDA didn't step in saying, chicken, you can't behave that way. And you see the chickenization of everything else.
Wait, so let's get a little bit of a bird's eye view of the history of American food production. Because you started talking about, you dropped so many little historical bombs there. Sharecropping, the regulations in the Upton Sinclair era. So take us to the moment before Upton Sinclair. What did things look like? Why did the regulations come in? And then what did we live in? What world of food did we live in after those regulations up until the present day?
Yeah, so I think actually meatpacking is the single best way to talk about all this stuff because it shows what the system could be and how it all falls apart. But let me also first start with the notion that I want to be very careful about romanticizing the past in the food system because in the day, it's rooted in genocide and slavery.
Yeah.
But we did make progress. We really did. And you saw the meatpacking where we as a society were mad and angry at what we saw in the jungle, the meat quality we were getting, and we made policy choices to break up these meat companies, to empower the workers, and they got power. That became a solid middle class job. People on both sides of my family did that for a living. And then what we've seen since the election of President Reagan is systematic assault on that industry, massive consolidation, where even in my book, I have a slaughtering baron, this secret, super corrupt Brazilian family, where I would actually argue they're the closest thing you have to a criminal organization in modern day corporate America.
Wow.
Which is saying a lot, but they actually pled guilty to bribing their way to monopoly level status. And I'm not talking campaign bribes, I'm talking bribery. But they are now the largest meat packer in America. They're the largest meat packer the world's ever seen. And that's why we see rampant use of child labor. We see all these bad things we tackled. This regulatory system collapsed. And we shouldn't be shocked that robber barons are filling that void. So
you said members of your family did this kind of work in maybe not the good old days, but decades ago and made a living that way. So what did their lives look like compared to what it looks like now?
Yeah, I mean, my grandfather's kind of like my idol. He worked at a hog plant in town, the old Wilsons. They bought a home out in the country. He had a little acreage. I grew up. That's kind of actually why I loved farming and gardening, is I just grew up working his plot with him. He owns his house. And nowadays, I mean, just even where I live, a lot of immigrants, and they live in Section 8 housing. They're usually Sudanese, and they work at either in Tame or Waterloo, Iowa. They live 2 or 3 families to a 2-bedroom. You know what I mean? My grandfather could buy a house, live the American dream, and now these people are barely getting by. And where they live is actually the most highly impoverished school elementary in the city. It says so much of where we've become, and it's incredibly dangerous. And you add the whole layer on top of it of a lot of these workers either undocumented or on the marginal thing of there's just so much abuse going on that we just don't even know about.
So how did this transition take place? How did we go from the world that your grandfather lived into the world that these folks now inhabit?
I mean, I just think we're living in a second Gilded Age, just another laissez-faire thing. And it's such a simple thing, but I realized sitting in a business school class a few years ago, the goal of any corporate executive is monopoly.
Yeah.
Period. And so you saw what they did is regulatory capture. In the election of Reagan was such a game changer of just, I know you had Lena Khan on. I mean, that's to me, this best ray of hope right now is we're moving away from that model, but it allowed massive consolidation to occur where my coffee baron in my book is a secret German family that now I know sells more coffee than Starbucks, but didn't even sell a bean of coffee in America until 2012. They bought Panera,
Wow.
Caribou Coffee, Einstein's Bagels, Brugger's Bagels, Keurig Cups, Stumptown, Intelligentsia, Krispy Kreme, you name it. You know,
But they bought all of the worst bagel chains. As a lifelong New Yorker, they bought all the bagel chains I would never fucking eat at in my life. They have spongy bagels. They toast every single one of them, and along with all these other chains as well. So, sorry, go on, please.
No, I was just laughing because that's like a hot point in my marriage. My husband agrees with you, but I love Panera Bread, Cinnamon Crunch Bagel. My husband's from New York City. So.
It's fine if you got to eat in a mall. It's completely fine. I get it. But yeah, please go on. Like, how did this occur?
Robert Bork. I mean, there's always going to be hatchet men for industry. I mean, there's always going to be academics doing the bidding of the rich. And he basically flipped America's antitrust laws upside down. We had all these guardrails. Like, what the coffee baron did could not have been done just a few decades ago. You couldn't come in and roll up a competitive industry. But when these guardrails came where they came up with this kind of junk science where consumer welfare standards, what they call it, where if you can show that prices go lower for consumers, you can buy a company. You can fire any economist to produce those numbers. And so you see massive consolidation in meatpacking, in coffee, in grain, in all these different industries. I actually think food is the most concentrated industry in America because it's that illusion of choice. You know what I mean? Like, if you look at the peanut butter area, there's actually one company has about a 60% market share in peanut butter, but they have all these different brands.
Wow, 60% market share in peanut butter. Like, so Laura Scudder is not a real person. That's what you're telling me. She's just part of some bigger conglomerate.
She's actually owned by that company. I think it's Smucker's.
Smucker's invented Laura Scudder. I thought her name too conveniently rhymed with peanut butter. I was looking at Laura Scudder peanut butter. There's no way that this lady was like, you know what? My name sounds like peanut butter. Let me start an independent peanut butter company. There's a fake lady.
This is why my mom hates grocery shopping with me, because I love telling her these little factoids when we shop.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I think we would have a good time at the grocery store together. We'd spend about 3 hours there and never buy anything. We'd just be pointing at stuff going, oh, you know what's fucked up about this maple syrup or whatever.
I mean, even my favorite chapter to write was a grocery chapter because I love them. But I had a grocery guy tell me, you got to think of a grocery store as modern day mafioso capitalism, because even the shelf space, there is so much shenanigans going on what you see at the eye level, like the whole slotting fees, all these games going on. It's incredible.
Yeah. Yeah. So what happens? Like, I know about the consumer welfare standard. Robert Bork puts out a very influential paper called, I believe, the Antitrust Paradox, right? Mm-hmm. Making the argument that all the antitrust enforcement that we had for decades and decades in America that broke up monopolies and made sure monopolies couldn't form actually was bad, and that we shouldn't be applying it, and instead we should only break up a monopoly when the price is going to go up for consumers. If the price goes down, it's okay.
Yes.
And then that has the advantage of being very easy for judges to adjudicate, right? You just get an economist before a judge, and the economist says, oh, here's some numbers that say the prices go down. Well, the judge isn't an economist. They're like, oh, you're an economist. All right. So if you say the prices go down, I guess they'll go down. That's good enough for me. I'm just some fucking judge. And bangs the gavel, and they allow the mergers to go through. And that's happened in so many different industries. It's happened in my industry, the entertainment industry, so many others. But 60% of peanut butter or all these coffee chains, that's a huge amount of consolidation. That would be illegal if not for this sea change in antitrust enforcement.
It's actually probably higher than 60% because a lot of times they do the store label, and you only know as usually when there's a peanut recall.
Okay.
You're totally, I mean, when you're explaining that whole Robert Bork framework, is, to me, that's the hallmark of this era, is big words to hide. I mean, you're using complex language to keep people out, to really hide shenanigans. Like, consumer welfare standard, those words mean nothing, but they sound really smart, and it plays into people's intellectual insecurity. Yeah. Because they don't want you to know what they're doing. That's all that is.
Yeah. The consumer welfare standard is like, oh, this sounds like a big, important legal doctrine that very important, smart people came up with, and you shouldn't argue with it. And it gives the decision the air of legitimacy, when in fact, it's much simpler. They're just saying, hey, let's let the mergers go through.
It's junk science, like masking moral judgments. In the day, how many hogs one man should own? That's a moral question we should wrestle with as a democracy. Excel can't tell you that answer, but we pretend to do it.
Well, so give me more examples about why this is such a big problem in food. Again, I know this is a larger economic problem, but what makes it so bad in the food system?
The workers. The workers are the ones being squeezed here the most. That is the one that shocks people the most in my book is my Berry Baron, Driscoll's.
your Berry Baron. Oh, Driscoll's. Driscoll's is in my supermarket. I buy Driscoll's all the time.
They sell 1 in 3 berries in America. But they don't grow a single berry, Adam.
They sell 1 in 3 berries, but they grow 0 berries. Is that what you said?
Yes.
How is that possible?
Chicken. They chickenize the berry industry. It's like a combination of Silicon Valley meets chicken. So they took the Silicon Valley model of owning the IP. So they own the IP of the berry, and then they contract out production. And part of that chapter is I wanted to tell people a lot of the produce you consume now has moved offshore because of these trade agreements where you can exploit labor, exploit the environment. So, you know what I mean? How can you compete on price against a 12-year-old picking berries in like Baja, Mexico?
Okay, now I have to dwell on the question of IP. You said there's IP in the berries, intellectual property. Now, I'm used to that in Hollywood, right? Like Batman is IP. And so if I want to write a Batman movie, well, guess what? I got to get permission. And also, I'm not that important as the screenwriter or the director. Batman's the star, right? Even the actor isn't that important. So IP is a real problem where I work. What is the IP for the berry? Is the IP the name Driscoll's? Is it the berry itself? What the fuck are you talking about?
Both. Because they want a branded product. I mean, Driscoll's is kind of the first branded produce thing. Like, you can't think of name a branded apple company. You really can't. But on top of it,
I can name apple varieties. You're right. I can't, and I know some of those are proprietary, but I can't name a company. I can name Chiquita Banana. That's one that I can think of that's maybe older.
But the key thing is it's really about durability. What's really fascinating about Driscoll's, it's really, you almost kind of have to blame Walmart. Like, Walmart is the king of kings, and the creation of one robber baron makes other robber barons. Where Driscoll's saw the rise of Walmart coming and realized Walmart wants one company to do 4 berries year round for 4,000 stores. And so that berry is not engineered for taste. So they make special types of berries that either sometimes are grown in Morocco, sometimes in Baja, sometimes in Chile, but it's all about durability. How can you make that berry last as long as possible as it goes from, Chile up to Vermont?
Right. And those Driscoll's berries, they taste not great. I mean, I was lucky enough. My parents gardened when I was a kid, and we would have strawberries fresh from the garden. They taste so strawberry-y. They're incredible. Driscoll's berries are I'm getting a hint of strawberry. I wafting under my nose when I bite into this watery pink-white berry. It's better than nothing. It's okay on cornflakes, but it's not like a berry, right?
But that's the story of the food system. Is nothing tastes good anymore. I mean, that is like writing this chapter. Yeah. I did little tastings. So I love milk. Shocking. Sorry.
Yeah. No. You look like a milk drinker. You look like a milk guy. I'm sorry.
I'm a white boy from Iowa. Yeah, of course I'm going to love my milk. But inputs matter. Inputs matter. And a cow in pasture is going to make a very different tasting milk than a cow inside a metal shed or in Bakersfield, eating corn all day. And that's a story across the food system. And on top of it, industry will love to say this makes cheap food. That's not factually true. That's maybe my favorite little factoid writing this book is, these are concentrated markets. Concentrated markets gouge. That's what they do. And we see rampant gouging across the food system. So we're paying more for garbage. That is what blows my mind.
Yeah, those Driscoll's berries are not cheap. They're still, berries are expensive to buy in the grocery store still. You don't get many, you pay, I don't know, $8, you get a little tiny thing of blueberries. Last year, a smoothie and a half. It's not
and it's just but the thing is, this system is done by design. Maybe the hardest chapter to write, but one of my second favorites is my grain baron chapter. It's about the Farm Bill. The Farm Bill heavily subsidizes grains. So it makes highly processed food cheap. But if you grow produce, you don't get anything. And it also pushes people to grow grains and not produce. So it pushed produce off the shore of America to other countries. And when supply chains get long, transparency collapses. It's so stupid, but part of the reason why I wrote that was I read an article 15 years ago where 70% of apple juice in America comes from China.
Really? 70% of apple juice in America comes from China, but American apple farming is still big. There's America makes a lot of apples. I get them in the grocery store. Many of them are good. So why would the apple juice be produced in China when we're growing apples here?
Because the biggest part of apples is labor. It's cheaper to hire someone over there, ship liquid across the world. We still produce a lot of apples, but not as much as you think. It's kind of, I know if you go to Trader Joe's, look at the back of every juice. You'll notice a lot of them will say Turkey, pick your country. It's a labor component. It's as we raise standards of living for farm workers here, it undermines, it kind of pushes people off. And even in Iowa, most of the orchards are gone that I grew up with, but they're not subdivisions. They're just more corn and soybeans because that's where more of the subsidies are going to.
And I've known for a while that we covered on my Netflix show, The G Word, the fact that we subsidize certain foods and not others, and that we subsidize these grains. And the story that we present is that it's somewhat of a historical accident that we subsidize those particular grains as opposed to any other crops.
Yep.
And we don't subsidize healthy fruits and vegetables. This is it's a very simple story. We told it on television, so it had to be sort of simple and quick. It's one I've read elsewhere. I did not realize that story, though, meant that I thought we were just producing less vegetables, not that it was getting pushed offshore. That's wild. Like if I'm buying broccoli or whatever, it's like more likely now to come from a different country entirely.
Yes. It took me a while to kind of, do you know they're like the census for people? Well, USDA does its own agriculture census and every 7 years they do it. And you start pulling into the data and you just notice, there's some weird trend lines going on here. And even something simple as during the New Deal, one of the things they did, the Workers' Progress Administration, is they commissioned state guides, they called them. Almost think of Wikipedia mixed with like travel. And I was reading the Iowa one and I was reading about all these different regional food productions. And you're like, wait, there used to be tons of peaches in Iowa. There used to be tons of onions. Like, so food supply chains used to be much more regional. And part of it is, to be fair, part of it is refrigeration. Refrigeration was a game changer. It extended supply chains. But what this system does is it really pushes people to specialize, but it makes them incredibly fragile. So like, that's what happens is like, you used to just see like Del Mar Peninsula used to do a lot of the produce for the East Coast. The Delta used to do some produce for the South. Now, all your strawberries in America used to come from California. Well, now it's trying to shift away to Baja. You know what I mean? Like California is increasingly nuts because that's just pure capital intensive.
Right. Like, sorry, when you say California is nuts, you're not referring to the craziness of life in California, which I can vouch to. Let me be clear. Things are pretty wild here in the state of which I live. No, you're talking about in California, which is a huge agricultural state. They are now mostly growing nuts. And part of that is because nuts are easily like financialized. Like you can ship them really easily. They're worth a lot of money. Like almonds they're calorie dense. They are also money dense per unit of almond, right?
Yep, totally. And then it's easy to harvest. You don't really need people. They just have machines that can do a lot of the work. So you don't need to pay someone to go up there and pull down the fruit.
But that means that, a state like mine that used to have, farming used to be a big part of its economy that people actually worked in. And that, there's the famous farm worker unionization efforts of the last century, like it's part of the history of the state, the fucking, Dust Bowl migration, all this shit. This is like part of what California is. Now it's just, the same amount of land, but it's being used with these giant machines to farm almonds just for a couple people to profit at the top rather than something that's benefiting everybody in the economy.
Yeah, in California, speaking of nuts, though, it's a different food system. And it took me as a Midwesterner a while to get my head around. Like, there's a lot of problems with like the Homestead Act and stuff, but it established like deconcentrated power, especially in the land holdings. California, on the other hand, has always been colonial. Like you drive the Central Valleys, you don't see farmhouses in the fields. And like,
right.
When you write a book like this, there's so much stuff that ends up in the cutting room floor. I got obsessed with the water stuff in California. Like the whole Imperial Valley makes no sense to me. The Salton Sea.
It's crazy the way water has been redirected across the state, specifically to in the most populous state in the country. And by the way, I live in the most populous county in the country as well, which is enormously thirsty of water, constantly in a drought state. But part of that is because so much of the water is directed to these farms that are owned, again, by one or two people as their sort of personal wealth creation. Do you cover the Resnicks in the book?
So I knew you were going to say that. I have a whole B list of barons that didn't make the cut. There's already been a lot of good.
You're calling the Resnicks B list barons, the almond and pomegranate barons of California. You're calling them B list? Hey, screw you, man. These are great. These are some of the greatest robber barons in the American economy. Stuart Resnick and his wife, whose name I forget. They steal water from all across the state. They're like making huge amounts of almond milk. Califia almond milk is them. Palm Wonderful is them. They've created company towns across of like where they, force people to live like on their property, right? They're horrible people. And I can't believe they didn't make your list. I'm insulted as someone who lives in California.
You want to hear the funniest?
Not have the Resnick on your list.
Have you
seen my ass.
Have you seen their new product?
What is their new product?
Seedless lemons.
Seedless lemons?
Because Americans, they're too lazy. They don't like the seed in their lemon. So like there's something evilly like Adam, this is the weirdest thing to say. Some of these barons, you have to kind of admire like the bullshit of it all. Like that's kind of brilliant. And it's I mean, that's the funny thing about writing this book. Sorry, I shouldn't say funny, but people tell me, oh, when I was in Minnesota, they're like, let me tell you about this potato baron. When I was in Indianapolis, they told me about this carrot baron. You're just like, it's so ridiculous that we have this. I mean, the Resnicks it sounds weird. When I structured this book, I wanted to mix up the narrative. So I have trashy money, then I go aristocratic money, then trashy. You know what I mean? Like, you don't want to do the same story over and over. The Resnicks kind of have this, they're like Cargill to me. They have this like Greenwich, like they understand image construction in a way that my hog baron doesn't give a fuck about.
Yeah. Yeah, they're very, they make themselves look good, right?
Yes.
There's a lot of, they do a lot of donations and things like that. They make themselves look like upstanding pillars of the community. Even in the products themselves, I mean, these people are one of the pioneers of almond milk. And, you know, almond milk is wildly popular and it is not great environmentally, right? Because the almonds take so much water to make. It's like, you know, a bunch of almond, but then it's just almond plus water, and it took water to grow the almonds. But they have like the Califia almond bottle. It looks so wholesome and happy. Oh, there's no cows involved, so it's good for me. Like it's got a halo to it.
Oh, my favorite. I mean, their best product is obviously Fiji water.
Oh, their Fiji water as well. I forgot about that.
Let's ship water from halfway across the world and brand it as bougie and like sell people it for like, you know, that's where we are right now.
Hey folks, this week's sponsor is one of my favorites on this show. I endorse them wholeheartedly, and in fact, I have been using their product since long before this podcast even existed. That's right, I'm talking about Delete Me. You know, you might not want to hear this, but it has got to be said. Your data is out there. There is a whole thriving ecosystem of data brokers, people who collect, buy, and sell our personal information on the internet right now. That means your name, your phone number, your home address, the names of your relatives, and your friends is almost certainly out there waiting to be snapped up by anyone with an internet connection. These sites are real. I have been to them myself, and I have seen my own information on them. And I've talked before about how exposed I felt when I realized that people were literally buying my home phone number from these data brokers. And frankly, I wouldn't wish that feeling on anyone. It was after that incident that I signed up for Delete Me, and I have not regretted it even for an instant ever since. But since then, the prevalence of harassment and online bullying has only seemed to escalate. It seems like every single week I hear a story about a real-life incident that began as an argument or interaction between two strangers on the internet, or about some kind of stalking that began online. You deserve to feel secure and anonymous on the internet and not have to be anxious about scammers finding your phone number, phishing attempts being sent to your email, or strangers knowing how to find your front doorstep. So for that reason, I urge you to check out Delete Me, not just for your security, but for your friends and family too. Their teams of experts scour the internet. They remove your and your family's information from those data broker sites. They send you a report every single 90 days. It really works. I can tell you it is true, okay? And get this, you can get 20% off your Delete Me plan when you go to joindeleteme.com/Adam and use promo code Adam at checkout. That's joindeleteme.com/Adam, promo code Adam. Hey, did you know that learning actually makes a sound? It's true. Listen. That's the sound of you mastering a new language with Babbel. Learning a new language can be one of the toughest yet most rewarding challenges out there. So if you are ready to dive in, make sure you're using the right tools to get the job done. A lot of language apps are really just kind of games that are dressed up to make you feel like you're learning. Babbel is different though. It is the real deal. Lessons in Babbel are crafted by real people for real conversation. They're approachable with tips and tools that are all based in real life and framed around conversation-based teaching. From minute one, Babbel is concerned with helping you get out there and put a new language into practice in the real world. I mean, look, I've lived in Los Angeles for years, and a ton of people here speak Spanish. And starting Spanish with Babbel has been rewarding to me in ways that I didn't even anticipate. I mean, sure, it's made chatting with neighbors and ordering food, enjoying cultural events easier to do, but more importantly, it's also just enriched my experience of living in Los Angeles and has made me feel more connected to my community in a way I didn't expect. It makes me excited to learn more and see what else it opens up for me. Now, that's just my experience, but studies from Yale, Michigan State University, and others have shown that Babbel is effective. One study even found that using Babbel for 15 hours is equivalent to a full semester of a college language course. And look, I can't promise that it'll be easy, but I can promise you'll be glad you did it. And get this, here is a special limited time deal for Factually listeners. Right now, you can get up to 60% off your Babbel subscription, but only for our listeners at babbel.com/factually. That's right, get up to 60% off at babbel.com/factually. Spelled BABBEL.com/factually. Rules and restrictions may apply. Yeah, and speaking of shipping, these liquids halfway across the world, I mean, it's ridiculous to be shipping so much food across the country or across the world in cargo containers, right? Why? I think about this every time I drink a Pellegrino, and I like a Pellegrino. It makes me feel classy, to have a sparkling water at dinner. But I'm like, a LaCroix just comes from Wisconsin. Why do I need it shipped from Italy, right? That's a lot more fossil fuels to have just like water brought from one place to another. There's water here, motherfuckers. Like, why do I need it to come on a boat? And the same thing has to be true of apple juice and all these other products as well, right?
Yeah, because it's all about exploiting labor. I mean, it's this whole neoliberal trade stuff. I mean, that is the trade component to the food system has been really underappreciated. I mean, even if you go back to Baja and the berries, these are like, it's hard to use these words, like almost like plantations, because people don't live in Baja. It's very sparsely populated. It gets as much rain as Death Valley, 3 inches a year.
Wow. They
bring in indigenous workers from Oaxaca. It's so dangerous to go report this, to be a journalist down there. They're plantations. You know what I mean? They build desalination plants on the ocean. They pull up the water. They drain the aquifers. The people there don't eat the berries. They're for rich, they're for upper class Americans at Costco.
Wow. So they're almost like terraforming, like they're doing it on the surface of Mars or something. I mean, Baja, California is a wonderful place, but it's not suited to this kind of agriculture. They're just like, oh, here's some cheap land with some cheap people. Let's just like get some water from somewhere else or drain it out of the aquifer and we can grow our cash crop.
Yeah. It's that financialization, short-term private equity kind of thing where, I mean, you have massive amount of pig production in the Oklahoma Panhandle where like the Dust Bowl took place and pigs are thirsty. Or even you go to Bakersfield and it's like massive amount of dairy going on there. And you're like, this doesn't make sense. I see an oil rig next to a dairy cow standing in sand in the desert.
Yeah, I mean, every time, drive that freeway route from LA to San Francisco, it's like it's the weirdest part of the whole drive. You go through that sea of cows and it was like, something is not right here. And also the air smells bad.
Yeah, I mean, but people don't realize dairy existed in Vermont, Wisconsin, upstate New York for a reason. It made environmental logical sense. When you put it in the desert, like New Mexico does 3 times more dairy than Vermont now. And it's all over on the eastern side by Texas near Clover. And it's just, these are industrial feedlots. And I mean, dairy's really scary because these guys are kind of like feudal lords too, because it takes a lot of undocumented men to run these empires. They're usually also the landlords. So they're both the employer and the landlords, or usually the largest employer in the county. I talk about my dairy baron created that milk Fairlife. I don't know if you've ever seen, it's like that branded milk in the grocery store. Coke just bought it for him. It's twice the cost, half the volume of normal milk because it has high protein content. So young men love it. That's where we are.
And when you say that, let's talk more about the financialization, like that this is driven by the market, driven by private equity. Like, how much is that the case? Is it, describe how that process might work.
I mean, part of it is, so like intellectually I came at this to me, I really believe you have to understand how someone amassed power to deconstruct it. And like, the simple, stupid story is, oh, this was efficiency. This was technology. But when you actually step back and you dig into it, you're like, no, this is an old fashioned story of a combination of regulatory capture and access to cheap capital. My hog baron, he saw the industrial model taking hold. He was building some of those metal sheds. He got some Wall Street money and he was able to essentially get big when you saw a market changing. And then he establishes market dominance. And then with that dominance, he's able to essentially set the regulatory structure. Like, he's given that money to the governor of Iowa, that much money, because his whole empire is Iowa. He needs to control Iowa. Because the second you regulate hog manure like human manure, his model's no longer economically viable. Like, I can't say that this fact blows my mind where like Iowa has 25 million hogs now, and a hog defecates 3 times more than us. That's the manure of 75 million people. That's California, Texas, and Illinois combined. And that regulatory structure is gutted. Like, there's
how many people live in Iowa?
3 million.
3 million. So you got 3 million people doing 3 million pounds of people shit. And then you've got 25 million hogs doing the equivalent of 75 million pounds of people shit.
Yes.
So you're saying Iowa is something like what? Like 7/8 shit.
Yes. I think,
excuse me, Iowans, but like the math there is boggling my mind.
It's the waterways in Iowa are open sewer.
Wow.
No, I was just going to say like 70% of the waterways are too toxic to go into. You see there's manure lagoons underneath them and they occasionally leak. And you're like, no city would occasionally leak human manure everywhere. You know what I mean? It's such a fact of life.
Yeah. And so you say that the hog manure, despite there being many times more, we're talking 20 times more of it than there is human manure. Human shit is regulated. It can only be put certain places. It has to be treated certain ways. Not the case with hog shit.
Yes. I mean, my favorite little example of this is I fly a lot. It's like the East Coast for like different stuff. And there's no straight flight out of Iowa. Shocking. And when I do that flight between Cedar Rapids and Chicago, you're flying over, like, especially in the winter, you fly over snow fields, fields covered in snow, and you'll just see hog shit. Because what they do is every few months you have to drain it. And you're not really supposed to drain it and put it on snow in the winter. Because then when the snow melts, it goes straight into the water. They do it. Everyone knows they do it and they don't get fined for it. It's an open secret. But the worst one's actually in North Carolina, because this is where the hog model comes out of. Was a state senator deregulated this industry in the 80s first. And he did it in the poor black areas. And because of the water table in North Carolina, in Iowa, they inject it into the soil they put on top of it. In North Carolina, they spray it into the air, the manure. So there's all these stories.
Spray it into the air.
Like they're watering the land.
Wow.
And so
there's stories of.
Yeah, stories of these poor black churches having to repaint their steeples every few years because they turn brown.
Jesus Christ. Just turn brown from the hog shit.
Yeah. You can't, I mean, people don't realize how much destructive the quality of life is. And the way these states are so captured, you can't stop the construction of these confinements when they go up. So your home is your everything in America. It's your wealth. If one of those metal sheds full of piggies get built, you're fucked. Like, you can't do anything about it. And it just destroys your wealth, destroys your quality of life. It traps you inside.
And one thing that really strikes me is how invisible this has become to mainstream America, because you've got the destruction of the family farmer. That means that, well, you've got like one guy owning an entire part of the food system. And then everyone working for him, as you say, is an undocumented immigrant, someone with, who's maybe here short term, or maybe they don't speak English. They're not able to vote. Or they're living on some sort of weird company town, often, the Central Valley of California or Baja California. Well, that's a different country, but you get my point. And the people eating the food have no visibility because there's been this like disconnect between the people making it and the people eating it. Does that sound right to you?
Totally. I mean, like, to me, the bigger two things, just to add on to that, is like, one, you have local news collapse in places like Iowa. I mean, Des Moines Register got gutted by private equity. Sinclair owns most of the TV stations. So these stories aren't being told. They're not being reported out. So then the robber baron essentially creates his own narrative. Like, I kind of think of Iowa, rural America now as like an extraction colony where the colonizers set the narrative.
Right.
So these stories aren't told. And on top of it, you have a lot of news outlets in New York City want to talk about what's the new high-end restaurant. Like, there's not these structural undercurrent stories.
Right.
It's like, what's the new vegan restaurant in Brooklyn,
that's food journalism. Yeah.
Yes. But it's easy. It's cheap. And on top of it, my hog baron has its own spokeswoman. So like, there's this whole propaganda apparatus that just licks them up and down all day. And I mean, my husband, I have these gay little sassy lines in the book that I kind of love. And in my hog baron chapter, Mike Rowe did a Dirty Jobs episode on my dairy baron.
Uh-huh. I love how, by the way, you keep saying my hog baron, my dairy baron.
Yeah,
you're really attached to these people. You love them. I feel like I just imagine you in your home, like just with their pictures on the wall, like little shrines to them everywhere. Like, you love these people.
Oh, I'm like, I had a writer buddy of mine called me out on that a few months ago too. Cause I spent 5 years on this and I read thousands of articles just to kind of get my head around it. You get a vibe, you get a flavor of them. You just kind of get to know what type of person they are. And like, I know that type of guy. My dairy baron's I call them Bubbas, just that arrogant white guy that thinks they build everything. I mean, so many of these guys cosplay as farmers, but they're really capital asset managers. And like, he goes on Dirty Jobs, sells his narrative of being a farmer. And then I dig into it and you're like, oh, you actually claim residency at the Ritz-Carlton in Puerto Rico, probably to evade capital income taxes. and then my line is Mike Rowe sold his narrative like he used to sell products on QVC. Because it's just like, he's just a piece of shit.
Mike Rowe, the guy from Dirty Jobs, famously, if people don't know, part of the right wing information machine. Like, he's been funded for years by all the biggest right-wing billionaires, and has always pushed a really pro-corporate message on that show and on his other products, which is that's his right to do as a communicator. I push a narrative that I find more true than that, but that is his ideological and historical role in the world.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. I didn't know that though. I was in Oklahoma watching Top Gun a few years ago. I was like there for something. I was at a theater, and he cut an ad before the movie saying how great fracking was for Oklahoma. But it was like the most delusional ad I've ever seen. And you're like, because he's one of those people. My parents always have him on. Like it's like Storage Wars, where just kind of on in the background.
Yeah, it's a good show. It's got this hidden ideological message that people don't usually appreciate.
That, and like, to me, the truth was so obvious. That's what actually bothered me the most about the Dairy Baron is they got a lot of press for how environmental sustainable they were. And you just go to their operation. It's about an hour south of Gary, Indiana. And it's just so obviously wrong. Like, I've never seen a Midwest cornfield with canals around it. You're like, wait, what's going on here? And you literally Wikipedia, and this was an old wetlands. It was Everglades at the north. Teddy Roosevelt used to go hunting here. This shouldn't be in row cropping production. And to do intensive dairy where dairy cows, we talk about hogs manuring a lot. Dairy cows do an insane amount more, where that dairy operation he's a part of has about 35,000 cows. Those cows do as much manure in a day as the city of Austin, Texas.
Wow.
He's doing that in a wetland.
So let's talk again about the people who are doing the work for these guys. Because look, I mean, Trump is out there right now saying he's going to deport every undocumented immigrant in America. That's his policy. He wants to deport all of them. And Biden has moved far to the right on immigration. There's almost a growing consensus about like deportation. At the same time, our food system is built entirely on the backs of these undocumented workers who are doing work that no, middle-class American would ever agree to do at the wages that are being paid. And part of like the work was basically invented for undocumented people to be underpaid doing, right? And so like how does that interact with our politics? I mean, just tell me about that piece of it. It seems insane to talk about deporting these people when like, where would you get your fucking Driscolls,
I mean, that is the irony of it all. I mean, my Dairy Baron gave a massive check to Trump right after, the Access Hollywood tape came out. But it's like, dude, your whole empire is undocumented workers. I mean, even writing this book, I discovered a worker died in his manure pit.
Wow.
It was a Honduras man, had 3 children. It was never reported. Took me like 2 or 3 years to get the death records on him because the power he wields in the county. That's the irony of it all. I mean, that's a thing I wrestled with writing in the coffee chapter was, and I think this has been lost history, is the role monopolists play in financing fascists. And I danced around that in the book, where Tim Wu had this good book called Curse of Bigness, where he kind of mentioned it briefly.
Yeah, that book's incredible. Yeah, well, that's where I got a bunch of the argument that I told you about Robert Bork from. Yeah.
Yeah, and so he had this little nugget in there that I dug more into. After World War II, a big part of America's reconstruction in Japan and Europe was trust busting. Like Congress commissioned a report, and they're like, how did this happen? And one of the key findings were monopolists finance fascists. Hitler's largest donor was a company called IG Farben. IG Farben was a chemical company. Hitler comes into a room and goes, I'll help you sell more chemicals, whatever. I don't mean all the crazy rhetoric. They cut him a check. They sell him chemicals, including chemicals used in gas chambers. That company's broken up into 7. Wow. One of the modern day companies it was broken up into is Bayer Monsanto. I just think that history is so important, especially now. And I think because I'm from Iowa, I kind of saw where it all fell apart. Like Iowa should be the Italy of North America. It should be the Napa. It should be where you go for food tourism. Yet, it has the second highest cancer rate in America. It's one of the most obese states. The politics of rage have filled the void of what used to be a solid middle class place, of what used to be a purple state. And we don't have to go down this path, but this is the path we're on. And like that is a goal I really wanted to have with this book is here's an honest conversation of where we are, but what we could do too.
It's amazing how these barons have inflamed our politics while keeping all the attention away from them. Right, like the public, a lot of the public is so angry about illegal immigration and undocumented immigrants, but like, why are undocumented immigrants taking those jobs? Because these barons have created a job that only an undocumented immigrant would take.
Yes,
that is so poor and has done so by fucking with the food system of the food that we eat. And so this is a problem that's entirely created by them. And yet the public is angry at the victims, at the people who are dying in the manure pits. so that we can eat worse food.
Yeah.
All so that these guys on top can make more money. It's insane.
The bearing that it's the scariest is because of how unknown they are is actually Cargill. So Cargill is owned by it's the largest private company in America. They're bigger than the Koch brothers, but
wow,
no one knows who they are. I mean, I didn't even have them in my business, like when I laid out the book, and I grew up around Cargill. I was born next to a Cargill plant. I played soccer next to a Cargill plant. My church was next to a Cargill plant. And they're all about owning the middle because they're not consumer facing. You don't know who they are, but they have so much money and power. And what they do is they engage in, like I call it, they use middleman. So they never do things overtly. They pay these DC groups to do their bidding so they can play, be ignorant. You know what I mean? Or plead guilt, plead, what's the word I'm looking for? Innocent. But it's incredibly dark. I mean, that is the fear of concentrated economic power is you just assume it corrupts the political system.
Yeah. Let's talk more about how this affects the food that we actually eat in so many ways. Like the financialization, the monopolization has actually altered the food itself, right? I mean, if I can give you a personal example of this, I last year was in upstate New York. I was on a college campus. The college campus had some apple trees. It was like a historic apple orchard on it. And so they had some apples out like in the cafeteria. And they were like, oh, you can have some, here's a Macintosh apple. And I took the Macintosh apple and I bit it. And I was like, this tastes nothing like a Macintosh apple I have ever had in my life. It was like crisp and juicy and had a complexity of flavor. It makes me sound like a food nerd. I'm not trying to be snobby about it. There was literally something going on with this apple I had not tasted before, whereas every other Macintosh, one of the most popular apple varieties in America I'd had before, had tasted almost exactly the same. And, I'm sure this apple was fresher because it was local and da-da-da-da, but also I was like, something about the genetics seemed different. Something like everything about this apple was different to me. And it made me just reflect on there are all these ways that the mechanized, financialized food system changes what we actually eat without us realizing it until we finally have the counterexample.
I mean, but I'm obsessed with owning the middle with this book is how radical the system has become. And like part of owning the middle and like what we're talking about, these reforms are like, oh my God, animals should be on the land. What a radical concept. Oh, food should be grown near you. Food should taste good. People should get a decent living wage. We've gone so far off track. And I will say, as dark as this can be, what gives me hope is everyone's seeing it's not working. Like the thing that's kind of shocked me the most is how much the business traveler has taken to my book. It's like a cliche for upper class Americans to go, oh, I went to Italy. I ate better food. I lost weight. It's cheaper.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Everyone's just kind of seeing it. It's not working. And that is like, I mean, I went on Glenn Beck's TV network recently. I mean, there's like this weird, there's this whole weird thing going too on the right now over food. Yeah. I mean, it's a little raw milky, RFK.
Yeah, but they've gotten, it's sort of like the crunchy, California hippies who got kind of right wing have influenced the rest of the right wingers to get a little bit more crunchy. And now they are really obsessed with the food system in a surprising way. I realized this when I did a segment about for Adam Ruins Everything. And it was a pretty light segment. It was just like, hey, you could eat bugs if you wanted. Like bugs are not that bad for you. A lot of cultures eat bugs. There's bugs in the food you already eat. It's a good source of protein. Just like a fun, light segment. And a bunch of right-wing blogs freaked out and were like, Adam Conover says you should eat bugs. And I realized that they have some sort of like meme about how in the future we'll all be forced to eat, like we're on the Snowpiercer train or something, and we're going to be forced to eat, Soylent Green or whatever. Yeah. Like they're like, they have like an apocalyptic future in mind, and I accidentally like triggered them and their fear of being forced to eat bugs. And I wasn't aware of that until that moment. I've seen ever since, that was maybe 5 years ago, I've seen more and more of this throughout the right wing. Their like obsession with the food system and purity and back to the land and that kind of thing.
Oh, I mean, just two things to add on to that. One, I laughed because Cargill's getting into the bug industry. They're trying to, as a protein source to feed industrial animals. So they want to, as like they kind of replace soybeans and corn. Is just, we'll feed the pigs inside these metal sheds bugs, which is like a whole new separate thing. But that's actually why I like book talks, to your point, because it's pattern recognition. You're like, why am I getting a lot of questions about raw milk? Why am I getting a lot? Because people come up to you, they have this conversation one-on-one. You're testing your rhetoric. I mean, that's actually where I get the best probably gossip for the book or like tips. It's just people like, oh, you should really look over here. Like I did a book event in the hometown of my hog baron. And it was the one time I was actually scared shitless. Where I put the tracking on my phone.
You were scared shitless even because there was so much shit surrounding you. You were ankle deep in shit. That's why you were scared shitless.
Or I could be floating in the next day, like some little Chinatown thing goes down.
Please go on.
But I was just that night I was the scariest I've been in the book tour, because like I didn't expect doing this book tour was every place an old lady would always ask me, "Are you worried about your safety?" And honestly, I'm not. And I can say that is honestly the beauty of America is I can write a book like this and not be worried about my safety. That said, that town is like, I'm going into the heart of the beast. I'm going to a town of 5,000 people and I was to do a book talk. I was shocked. We had 50 people show up. And to get 50 people at a book talk in 2024 is a big deal. It was just people pissed off. And they were about more than half the room came up to me afterwards. "Oh, I knew Jeff and Deb. They promised me this. They did that. They did, you could just see the anger and the sadness in people's face. And like, that's also something I've internalized writing this book is there's a degree of Stockholm syndrome in rural America that I don't think urban America appreciates. A lot of people fought power and they lost. And like, you can't afford to leave. It's too depressing to really grapple with this material. There's still some fighters. I open with a book of a pissed off old woman fighting it. Usually the fighters still are pissed off old ladies in rural areas, but it's hard. But it's a weird, these people are barely getting by and you can just feel the pain. I don't know how to describe that, but it's just something I've noticed.
Yeah. Well, I think we have all felt that there's something is deeply wrong with our food system. And, we had, when we cover on the show what has happened to us health-wise because of food, the blame, and to me, always falls on the food system, on the capitalist food system that has, given us all of these foods that are very delicious to us, but are extremely unhealthy. But more importantly, even the foods that are healthy have gotten less healthy. Right. Yes. All the meats have gotten less. They're produced less healthily for the people who produce them, but also for us. Do you have any particular examples of that? And do you think that the process that you're talking about here, this baronization, this chickenization of the food system is to blame for our poor health outcomes?
Oh, 100%. I mean, it takes money now to be healthy in America. Yeah. One of the hardest sections was actually the obesity section in my Grain Barons chapter, where it all goes back to corn and chicken. I joke. Yeah. But like, before corn syrup really took hold in America, we didn't have, sugar was hard to do. Sugarcane has a very limited production region like Louisiana and Florida. And sugar beets actually has this weird New Deal supply management system where it's like, there's quotas basically on how much you can produce. But then the creation of corn syrup in the 70s and 80s and the amount of subsidies going into it just exploded the use of sugar. Julia Guthman is an academic at the University of Santa Cruz, has done a lot of scholarship on this and really drove that point home. But that's why I love going to grocery stores, because you can just see the price points. You walk down the pop aisle and you're like, a 2 liter is $1.50, but if I want carrot juice, it's $6. Like, you're pushing people into it. And I've done one interview for this book that got junked, and it's because there's this elitism among certain people where they blame the lower income person for their obesity. And I was like, you don't get it. You don't get what it's like to work 2 jobs, have kids, and this food is easy. It's easy to cook a frozen pizza. I grew up on that stuff. It's hard. Yeah. It takes money to eat healthy, and it takes time when people are barely getting by. Also, keep in mind, this stuff is, if you had a rough day, who isn't happy after like a box of Cheez-Its,
Right. And well, there's a place for that, right? And there's a lot of concern that this sort of argument leads to a continual shaming of people eating, processed foods, et cetera. There's a place for processed foods in the world, but there is also something clearly very wrong with our food system that is like hurting people and that is doing something bad to their health. And you think this is the culprit?
Oh, 100%. The Farm Bill is a reflection of our moral values, and our Farm Bill is now designed for Wall Street. It's designed for PepsiCo to make chips and pop as cheap as possible at the expense of everything else. So as chips got cheaper, fresh stuff got more expensive. And it's, also these supply chain lines, it's even in like a lot of vegetables used to be grown in Iowa, and that's gone. And also like when things, my husband and I were just talking about carrots today, how awful baby carrots taste. So like private equity is one of the largest grower of carrots in America.
Yeah. It's really funny. I've had conversations with people before because, I'm the kind of guy, I just look stuff up when I'm interacting with it. And I looked up baby carrots once, and you probably know better than me, but the story that I read was that one enterprising carrot company figured out, well, if we take the ugly carrots and we whittle them down into little carrot nubs, then, that's reproducible. The carrot doesn't need to be pretty, right? We can do that with any carrot. And then we can take the shavings and we can, turn it into sugar and use it as an additive in things. And when I try to tell people this, I'm like, baby carrots are like whittled carrots. Like, people will say to me in my life, they'll go, no, they're baby carrots. They're like the carrot is a baby. They picked it while it was still a little child. I'm eating a carrot toddler. No, motherfucker, it's a whittled carrot. Somebody put that on a lathe, and it turned it real fast to shrink the carrot down. You're eating a mass-produced carrot chunk.
I'm embarrassed to say, Adam, I thought that until very recently.
They don't even look like baby carrots. They look like a piece of carpentry. They look like something you'd use to join two 2x4s.
I just didn't think we'd be that wasteful. I mean, that's why I just couldn't believe we would shave down a carrot. And then, but here's the thing, it makes a bad product. And so you turn away from it. You're like, oh, melons is the other one I notice about.
You got to put so much hummus on a baby carrot for it to taste like anything. It's like the saddest experience to eat a baby carrot.
Yes. And so it pushes, you're like, produce isn't that good anymore. Or these Driscoll berries don't taste that good. So then you start eating more, well, who isn't, Oreos and stuff. And then on top of it, you go into these grocery stores and you're not seeing innovation. You're not seeing new products because these stores, they don't want to deal with some local person doing what you can only do 2 stores at Walmart. They want to deal with Nabisco that can do 4,000 stores. So that's why when you go into a store now, you just see a new kind of Oreo. You don't see new products. You don't see quality stuff. And it's on top of it, it skews the system so much where, so much of that neoliberal framework of change the system with your fork just bifurcates the system even more. You have whatever that fancy LA one's called, Aragon for the rich.
Erewhon, yeah.
Erewhon.
Yeah.
And then you have Walmart is massive. Walmart sells 1 in 3 groceries. Their market share in grocery is the same as the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th combined. That is an insane amount of market power.
And as you say, one baron creates more barons because Walmart wants all the food. They want to buy it in huge tranches. They want to get all their food from one supplier. And so that privileges the one supplier who's able to grow the exact same thing in huge quantities to sell to every Walmart store simultaneously. And that causes them to buy each other up, or for one, if Walmart's selling 1 out of 3 groceries, then pretty soon you're going to have one person selling 1 out of 3 berries, and then probably even more than that. You said melons, though. What's the problem with melons? I wanted to hear it.
After spending all this time, I feel sorry for my husband because I just vomit this information I had him all day. And so we got married 2 years ago.
I'll replace him. I'll marry you. I love hearing this stuff. If he doesn't want to hear it anymore, okay? Propose. I'm down.
Our 1-year anniversary, we went to France and Italy. And I got to see a food system that worked. And I hate cantaloupe. I see it in the fruit bowl. I think it tastes awful. But then they had it over there and you're like, wait, this is actually really good. They would sell it on the side of the road. You pull over, you buy a good cantaloupe and you're like, it's kind of like when you cut corners so much, at some point you're cutting bone. There's no efficiencies to gain. You're cutting quality. And it's just so rampant, especially private equity people don't understand how it is to run a business. The best grocery stores in America are actually still privately owned, like H-E-B in Texas, Hy-Vee in Iowa, Wegmans on the East Coast. You know what I mean? There's not this Wall Street financialization because some boy who went to Harvard MBA, who's never worked a grocery store job in his life, doesn't understand the nuances of these marketplaces. And it's a profession. There's a craftsmanship to merchandising. My dad used to be a beer merchandiser. So I noticed that when I go into you go into a Wegmans or whatever, fancy those type of grocery stores, they merchandise, they care. It's homecoming weekend. There's gonna be a bunch of homecoming stuff. You go into Walmart and they just throw the pallet on the shelf and you have to dig for it.
Yep. Well, what can be done about this, right? You had said that maybe there's a positive sign in Lena Khan's leadership at the FTC. We'll see how long she's there based on what's going to happen in November. I kind of don't think Trump will keep her on if he wins. But, we have seen a sea change in antitrust enforcement, at least on the Democratic side. And there are occasionally some Republicans who will join in on an antitrust fight here or there. They do occasionally have an ally. And you're saying that, the right side of the aisle is becoming more and more obsessed with food. So is there a growing appetite for change in our food system?
I think what Lena is really fascinating is I actually think she's one of President Biden's best of political appointments. Because
yeah,
what says so much was earlier this year, Matt Gaetz went to the Wall Street Journal and praised her.
Wow.
There's such I'm a big fan of outflanking. Like, Republicans will talk this big game about me backing. Be right there with them. Josh Hawley does a lot of this. Outflank Republicans here because it's such a hold their feet to the fire. I mean, it's also kind of, I'm a big believer too that weird things happen in America when unique coalitions come together. But what gives me the most hope and what we can do are like three things that come to my mind. One is the death of ethanol. The Biden administration has been incredibly aggressive at transitioning the American auto fleet to EVs and hybrids. And people don't realize, but the largest use of corn now in America is ethanol. And it's
really, which is used for what?
Burning corn in your cars. Like, it's truly,
wow.
It is. The Museum of Failure included ethanol in its exhibit. Anyone that thinks ethanol is good for the climate thinks the world is flat in 2024. Also, I think in food, you see one of President Biden's worst political appointments, Secretary Vilsack. Secretary Vilsack of USDA is a former industrial dairy lobbyist. His solution to climate change right now is to put ethanol in the airplanes.
Wow. And by the way, this is a crazy thing to do because like fossil fuels are bad enough because you're taking energy out of the ground, putting it into the atmosphere, right? Stored energy out of the ground into the atmosphere. That's bad. That warms the earth de facto, right? But if you're taking energy from the sun and putting it into the atmosphere, right? Like the sun is hitting the corn, making the corn grow, and then you're burning that, you're releasing, that's a whole new source of energy to put into the atmosphere to heat the planet up.
It's even worse than that because you have to use fossil fuels to help grow the corn. And like,
right, of course you do, fertilizer and et cetera, yeah.
And the underappreciated thing is Koch brothers are actually massive in fertilizer. They have a massive holding in nitrogen fertilizer. So like there's this whole weird marriage between big ag and big fossil fuel oil that hasn't been fully, I don't think people realize, but it's just delusional. But you know what? It's like watching Wile E. Coyote chase that bird off the cliff right now. Ethanol's going to die. I don't care what, I don't care what the industry says. It's going to meet its maker. And my big moment to me, it's what are we going to do at that moment? I want to put animals back on land. That is like truly one of my biggest things because it's like, it takes the temperature down. It makes, who doesn't want more farmers? Like, here's the thing, most grain production is going to be robotics. That's not a bad thing. You go to a farm show now, these tractors drive themselves, but there's only so many dairy cow one man or one person could look after. Better for these rural areas. It's more jobs. Yeah.
So you want to go to a small scale version of dairy farming again, like having like breaking it up, and rather than one quote farmer owning huge numbers of cows, you've got small scale farms again. You think that's a massive improvement?
I just want to go back to that family farmer model. And it's also what it does too. Dairy's weird where actually this industrial dairy model is actually even worse for the climate because when a cow is on pasture, when she defecates, she's fertilizing her feed. When you put them indoors, first of all, you have to use fossil fuels to grow her feed. But when you pool her manure, when it breaks down, it creates additional methane that is not produced when she defecates on land. So it creates additional fossil fuel gas. So like that Bakersfield dairy production model is actually incredibly more destructive for the environment than, some dairy cow in Wisconsin. Yeah. So like Vilsack comes out of that world. So that's why he has this like bullshit kind of mentality there.
But do you think there is an emerging politics that is, a more populist food politics, right? Where we can sort of go across partisan lines. And because if you're looking for, rural America is largely red, right? Republican politicians tend to have pro-corporate policies. So do Democrats, but these are trends we're talking about. It does seem like this is an issue that could break some of our political logjam. If you have, politicians from rural areas saying, no, actually, I want to fight for the chicken farmer, the hog farmer, the small scale pork farmer, like these. Actually help their folks.
Oh, totally. I mean, keep in mind, I also want to broaden the conversation because if it's not just about the farmer, it's about those who pick it, process it, transport it, cook it, serve it. People like my mom and dad, that's 1 in 10 of Americans. And like, we're obsessed with such a small part of the pie. And once you talk about 1 in 10, you center that on labor. That's what really matters. And it's the dirty secret of big ag is it hollowed out its voter base. You used to have thousands of Iowa hog farms, and now you just have fewer robber barons, and no one's called bluff on. Like, the emperor has no clothes now, and no one's called it. And that's also like my big thing now is I think we should junk the farm bill. The farm bill picks favorites. It heavily subsidizes grains. It's destructive for the climate. It's rewards this destructive model. On top of it, you have the whole Heritage Cato Institute. They hate that model too. They hate the farm bill. And like, I think to me, there's no reason why Democrats should support the modern day farm bill. Like the best example of how rotten the farm bill's gotten is actually crop insurance. Because when people hear crop insurance, they think it's for like a hurricane or rain or whatever. It's not. It's insurance for low prices, where 60% of the premium is paid for by the taxpayer.
Wow.
So, and there's no cap, Adam. So like, people don't realize Bill Gates is one of the largest owner of farmland in America. If you want to talk about like another baron. So he can get as much crop insurance as he wants to grow as much corn as he wants. And so, you know what I mean? It's so, I've been telling reformers, don't play, like the system is so broken. Why back that? Like, let's move away from the system. At the same time, use school meals as like the positive structural change vehicle. Who doesn't want all dairy served in Wisconsin coming from, you know, pasture family dairy farms instead of like industrial beef in the Brazilian rainforest? Like, it's good politics, it's good taste, and you keep your money local, and you're building up a new system as you phase out an old one. Because I mean, school food's a joke. We all know that.
Yeah, but the problem is the farm bill is one of those bills that, you know, no matter how divided Congress is, it flies through every time because it has so many parts of the society are dependent on it, right? Like it's got something for everybody, or it's got something for the voters or the constituents or the moneyed constituents in every area. You know, it gives subsidies to the cities to purchase food, gives subsidies to the to the barons in the red areas to grow the food. Is there really a chance that it could be, you know, junked, as you say?
I mean, it's actually kind of falling apart. I mean, they couldn't pass. They tried to do basically a copy paste bill, and they had to punt it. So like the rumor on the street is they're going to try. No, but
then I'm not up on what's happened. That's amazing.
No, but it's this weird thing where so even Republicans find crop insurance too gluttonous. Like they want more crop insurance. You're right, though. I mean, there's this weird coalition of like it's food stamps and the farm entitlement programs. I'll be frank. I think you can break those apart. Food stamps are going to be okay because Walmart depends on food stamps. Walmart is the richest family in America. Some days it's the richest family in the world. So much of their employee and customer base depends on food stamps. It's a wage subsidy. So much of corporate America needs that. I'm feeling comfortable. No one's going to touch that. I mean, first of all, you just need all Democrats and 10 Republicans to save that. You take away the crop insurance, like you do farm bill standalone, half the Republicans will flake on that. And if Democrats don't support it, these my hog baron, you know what I mean? Like they don't have a constituency.
Yeah.
Their massive amount of welfare they get. It's just, also, that coalition was formed in 1960s America. The suburbs were not a part of that coalition.
Right.
Like rural America's, there's something.
Suburbs. I left the suburbs out of the story.
And I mean, this election will come down to a few suburbs in the Midwest states.
Yeah. What can the public do about this if they're as incensed about this as I am to take us out?
The big thing is I always tell people, buy what you can, buy your values, whatever. But the other thing too is help connect your farmers doing it right with your schools, with your colleges. Those procurement contracts really stabilize them. Like a lot of farmers will tell you privately, they don't like doing the farmers market. They get rained out, whatever. It's not consistent. You get that contract with the UC school system, your local school. It's just such a good stabilizer. And you want to build up the people doing it right. Because writing this book over 5 years is, yes, I focus on a few bad people, but most people are good. They're trying to do the right thing. They're just struggling. And so how do you copy and paste them and help them, you know, not decay, but like actually grow and because it's also, there's no positive vision here. That's what I realized writing this book. Neither party is articulating a positive vision, especially for rural America. And I actually think people crave a positiveness. Like they want the opposite of what they have right now. And the positiveness is inspiring. You're like, okay, it gives people that power to rush the gates to get to that better system. Like that's what gives me hope, I should say.
Yeah. And it sort of seems like all we need is a politician or a leader to really run on that stuff, you know, and to say, to find the way that this affects everybody and to speak to people who haven't been spoken to.
It literally is a pinata saying, hit me, hit me. I mean, look, the meat packing, especially breaking up the meat companies, like these are comically corrupt companies. By the way, they're not even American. They're like these weird state-backed monopolies.
Yeah.
Smithfield's there's this weird Chinese relationship there. A lot of the beef companies are Brazilian. So it's like, there's good politics there. It's just someone needs to, you're waiting for the right person with local courage to take a swing at the pinata.
Well, God willing, somebody will. And I can't thank you enough for coming on here to make the case that somebody should. You've certainly convinced me. The name of the book is Barons. You can pick up a copy if you love this conversation at factuallypod.com/books. Where else can people get and where can they follow your work, Austin?
I'm on all the socials. My handles are Austin Frerick, Frerick.
Thank you so much for being here, Austin. It's been incredible.
Yeah, thanks again for having me on.
Well, thank you once again to Austin Frerick for coming on the show. Once again, if you want to pick up a copy of his incredible book, you can head to factuallypod.com/books. And when you buy there, you'll be supporting not just this show, but your local bookstore as well. If you would like to support the show directly, you can do so on Patreon. $5 a month gets you every episode of this show ad-free. For $15 a month, I will read your name in the credits of the show and put it in the credits of every single one of my video monologues. This week, I want to thank Andreas Gauger, Angelique Fouquet, Eden Welch, Patrick Flanagan, Kratone Linslat, Andrew M. Purifoy, Marcus Mitchell, and Vanessa Russell. Thank you so much for your support. If you want to join them, head to patreon.com/Adam Conover. Of course, I want to thank my producers, Tony Wilson and Sam Roudman, everybody here at HeadGum for making the show possible. You can find all of my tour dates, just a reminder, at adamconover.net. I'll see you out there on the road. And until next time, we'll see you on Factually.
That was a HeadGum podcast.